All right, looks like we're good to go. Hi, everyone. All right, welcome to our quarterly council meeting. Thanks for joining us. I'm Cody Ziegler, the Director of Statewide Policy here at the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, and I have the pleasure of opening our meeting today. This is our last state council meeting of this year. We plan to schedule the meetings for next year soon after today's meeting, and we will be sure to inform you all when we have that schedule set. As always, our state council materials have been posted to our webpage ahead of the meeting. We have two main agenda items today that we're very excited about. First, we have invited the advisory committee members to meet the state council members, as you can see from all the faces here on the Zoom screen. And we'll participate in a discussion about how their expertise can help improve the council's work. After that, the Department of Healthcare Services will present on CalAIM, California's Medicaid program, and the Housing and Homelessness Incentive Program, and facilitate a discussion about interagency coordination in relationship to those programs. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I lost my screen there. And with that, let's get the meeting started. The California Interagency Council on Homelessness is hereby called to order on this day, November 10th, 2022 at 2:38 p.m. Will CalICH staff member Giselle Sanchez please call roll?
Yes. Co-chair Lourdes Castro Ramirez.
Present.
Co-chair Mark Alley.
Present.
Councilmember Kathleen Allison.
Present.
Councilmember Tomas Aragon.
Present.
Councilmember Stephanie Clendenin.
Present.
Councilmember J.C. Cooper.
Present.
Councilmember Susan Damaris.
Present.
Councilmember Mark Ghilarducci.
Present Lisa Monkett in his place.
Thank you, Lisa. Councilmember Vito Imbasiani.
Present.
Councilmember Kim Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Tina Johnson Hall.
Present.
Councilmember Veronica Lewis.
Present.
Councilmember Tamika Moss.
Present.
Councilmember Tim Rainey. Councilmember Nancy Robles.
Present.
Councilmember Rebecca Ruan O'Shaughnessy.
Present.
Councilmember Tony Tavares.
Elisa Becerra in for Director Tavares.
Thank you, Elisa. Councilmember Gustavo Velasquez.
Zach Olmstead here for Director Velasquez.
Thank you, Zach. And Councilmember Joe Xavier.
Present.
I will also note that we have a new council member, William McGee from the Department of Education, who is not present today, but Carmina Barrales is here to represent CDE. All right, we have 17 members present. We could continue with this meeting.
Hi, Dr. Bassiani here. I'm sorry, I think I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh, we got you. Thank you.
Great. Good to see everyone. So before we begin and move to our next agenda item, I just have a few logistics to go over to help the conversation run smoothly today. I'd like to remind all members of the public that we take public comment after each action item listed on the agenda and at the end of each meeting. To ensure everyone is given a chance to speak who would like to, we will allow for a maximum of 2 minutes for each comment. Our team will put a 2-minute timer up on the screen and warn you when you have run out of time. We welcome all public comments and feedback. However, due to the structure of this public meeting, we're unable to respond to them. For this reason, if you have any specific questions that you would like answered, we ask you to please email us at calich@bcsh.ca.gov. I will now turn to our co-chairs, starting with Chair Secretary Castro Ramirez for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Cody. Good afternoon, everyone, and my apologies for the technical difficulties that I had earlier. This is quite a historic meeting, having the Statewide Interagency Council on Homelessness and the Advisory Committee together for the first time. Let me again thank and welcome all 31 members of the Advisory Committee for accepting the state's invitation to serve in this capacity, and again, to welcome you to today's meeting. For the purposes of members of the public, just want to share with you that the advisory committee, that all members of the advisory committee have been sworn in. Many of them, I think we had 29 that made the onboarding meeting that was held on October the 17th, at which time Secretary Galley and I had the opportunity to hear from each new member about their vision and the solutions to address homelessness in our state. Each member brings their own perspective about what drives them to do this work. And collectively, the group shared with us their goals and some of the sort of common themes that I took away from that convening were a commitment to inclusion, a commitment to advancing trauma-informed care, and a focus on creating more affordable housing. It was truly inspiring, and we're so appreciative to you all for saying yes to be part of this effort. The advisory committee will help the council by providing insight, feedback, and guidance as we move with urgency to connect people experiencing homelessness to housing, services, and supports. We look forward to getting the best ideas and guidance from each of you members of the advisory committee. I also, of course, want to recognize that within the council, we have 2 state council members who serve as community representatives, Ms. Veronica Lewis and Ms. Tamika Moss. As state council members with on-the-ground expertise, they have guided us towards actionable steps. They've reminded us that we need to create spaces for meaningful input on program design and to be thoughtful as we carry out state-led initiatives. Let me also lift up the work of HCD and CalHFA, who both serve as members of this council. Specifically, as we all know, they have been very much focused on the preservation of affordable housing and expanding affordable housing solutions. This summer, we celebrated the 2-year anniversary of Home Key, and were able to mark this milestone by announcing that 12,500 Home Key units have been funded through HCD. I want to thank the governor, the legislature, our local partners, and the HCD team for this tremendous achievement. These are not just units. They're not just housing units. These are homes with critical support, homes that are affordable for decades to come, and homes that provide dignity and stability. And finally, I wanted to also briefly update the council on the recent action concerning the local homelessness action plans that were submitted by communities to BCSH's HAP team. As we all know, the governor made it very clear that we all can do better in meeting this moment in addressing homelessness, particularly unsheltered homelessness. The governor expressed particular concern about the proposed statewide goals related to reductions in unsheltered homelessness by 2024. These plans, as we all know, are required. They're required elements of this year's homelessness housing and prevention program in the grant application, essentially HAP 3, which falls under the purview of my agency, BCSH. The BCSH HAP team continues to work closely with each jurisdiction to receive additional information regarding their outcome goals to reduce unsheltered homelessness and also to increase exits into permanent housing. We are keenly aware of the need to deploy these resources. I understand how important these resources are to communities to ensure that they're able to continue to deliver the services and support and the connection to housing. And we're working as quickly as possible to be responsive and to provide the guidance necessary. CalICH staff is working diligently with jurisdictions to deliver on that promise. And we look forward to building on these efforts as we provide some additional guidance in the next few days on the development of the HAP 4 local homelessness action plans. During today's meeting, under the agenda item labeled State and Federal Updates, you will have an opportunity to hear from the BCSH HAP team. They will provide additional updates and information to help us better understand next steps. I will, just again emphasize that improving local action plans is critically important, but this is not the only area of opportunity for us to continue to make impact and have effective delivery of services. This council is very focused on ensuring that all state entities that are working to invest and support local communities in addressing homelessness are doing our best to be responsive. So in response to the governor's call to greater action on reducing unsheltered homelessness, it will be even more important than ever that we're all thinking as a state council about how together we can help our local partners make the progress that we all want to see, the progress that people experiencing homelessness in California need us to make. While the state council does not have oversight and implementation and responsibility for any of the specific programs, the role of the council and the shared responsibility that we all have is to ensure that we are doing everything possible to drive programs to be more responsive and to synchronize our work and to enhance and produce more effective outcomes. That's why I'm pleased that today's meeting will also include a presentation from the Department of Healthcare Services regarding CalAIM and the Housing Homelessness Incentive Program. In our work together over the last year, the council has taken some very big steps. We've updated the statewide action plan for preventing and ending homelessness to reflect the intersection of housing, healthcare, social services in our shared work. We also have acknowledged the importance of listening to the voices of those with lived expertise and lived experience on homelessness. And we will soon hear, as Cody mentioned at the start of the meeting, from the advisory committee, this group of individuals that have been brought together to provide greater insights, guidance, and to help the council advance its priorities. Ending homelessness requires that we all work together, and I look forward to seeing what this council, with the support of the advisory committee and our many partners, can accomplish in 2023. Now, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to my colleague and co-chair of this council, Secretary Mark Galley.
Lourdes, thank you so much, and to Giselle, Cody, Dakshika, Corinne, and you, Secretary Castro Ramirez, thanks for always partnering to get us to today. It is an important meeting for us, wrapping up our first full year as a council. I think obviously the progress we want to see the council make is always slow and hard-earned, and we continue at it. But I appreciate the council members and now the advisory committee joining us, which really underscores what we hope to do. You know, the thinking around the council, of course, is all about connecting dots at the state level. How do we, across all these departments and agencies, make sure that we're swimming in the same direction with that single goal of ending unsheltered homelessness? And the last introduction with the advisory committee, just the rich nature of experiences, both those with lived experience and those who have the lived experience of serving in the environments in our cities and counties across the state, I think is going to be key to draw that in. I can't say enough about the opportunity we have to be the dot connectors. You know, I think about the folks from Cal HHS that are represented, the many department heads, and each of you doing your piece, but how much better is it when we connect the dots? And I know we're doing a lot of that in our own agency, and to do it across agencies on this such important issue is key. And I just want to lift up one key theme Lourdes, you mentioned a few, and I'll just reiterate one. It's about the housing, right? We struggle getting people housed. The services, of course, slog, difficult, come through so many different doors and avenues. But we heard from the advisory committee in their testimony that you can't simply ignore how important that housing piece is. And so I look forward to us in our effort to be chief dot connectors for the state of California and the governor and his leadership in this area, that we consider how we use these resources for that, building more, paying for more, figuring out how we get people off the streets, out of congregate settings when that's appropriate, into those settings that we know will bend the arc of their life towards greater success. I am also excited about the opportunity to really live what this council was put together for. Presenting JC Cooper, thank you, JC. I'll have a chance to thank you in a moment as well for preparing a brief presentation to get us started, but also the opportunity to ask other council members to sort of reflect on how they might use these opportunities that come through the Medicaid program, through the Department of Healthcare Services, and the tremendous ingenuity and innovative approach that they've taken, really leading the nation. I was with some of the CMS leaders this week, along with JC, just hearing about how we are pushing the envelope, even beyond sometimes their own comfort zone, because we insist on leading with that person, that Californian who's vulnerable in mind. And so I'm grateful to hear not just about CalAIM and some of the associated programs, but also the Housing and Homelessness Incentive Program that really came about because our team saw an opportunity, saw that we had a chance to bring more resources to our state in the support of solving or ending homelessness, that we are where we are. So a lot more of those ideas to come, we hope. And it's important that the council have an opportunity to hear about it and in real time, through our conversation, connect some dots that otherwise might not be connected. And certainly with the advisory committee's input and their real life experience, we look forward to making sure we hear and draw on their expertise over time as well. And just to reiterate the point you made, Lourdes, I know it's not the role of the council to necessarily operate these programs and figure out how they get implemented, every I and T dotted or crossed as necessary, but really to think at the high level, how do we not miss a chance to connect and to really leverage them for all they can do for the people that we're here to serve. So with that, I'll turn it to you, Cody. Really a pleasure to be here. I will say my internet, whatever reason, has been fine all day, and then suddenly, Lourdes, it's contagious. Mine is acting up. And so I'll be transitioning also to phone, and Corinne is going to help me facilitate the conversation with JC on CalAIM and other things from DHCS. So thanks, Cody, for a chance to make some opening comments.
Great. Thank you both. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I'm going to pass it to our Deputy Secretary of Homelessness, Dakshika Wikrema.
Thank you, Cody. And I'm just going to take barely a minute just to quickly acknowledge the work of Julie Lowe, who was the executive officer of CalICH, who, as we all know, I think I sent you an email, transitioned to another position. But I wanted to take a minute because she was integral to all the efforts that we see before us today. You know, thanks to her leadership over the last 2 years, she helped drive the state's commitment to everything we just talked about: cross-sector collaboration, scaling up of good practices, really centering the voices of people with lived experience and lived expertise, and really serving as the steward for this transformed council. As Cody mentioned, this is the 4th meeting where Julie really helped lead the effort to transform the council from the previous year to what we see now before us. And so just wanted to take a moment to thank Julie. We all benefited so much from a profound experience and commitment to ensuring that our work had a collective impact and ultimately had a lasting difference in the lives of the people that we all ultimately aim to serve. Californians experiencing homelessness. So thank you, Julie. And I wanted to pass it on to Cody.
Great, thank you. I will now go to Giselle to facilitate the consent calendar.
All right, we'll now move to agenda item 3. Daniela, thank you. So this is the consent calendar. It's for regular non-controversial items that need to be approved by the council where we don't expect any discussion from the council. We have one item, the adoption of the meeting summary from the September 1st council meeting. Before proceeding, since this is an action item, we will now accept public comment. Please keep comments to the items on the consent calendar only. If your comments are not related to the consent calendar, there will be time for general public comment at the end of this meeting. If you're connected through Zoom, please select the raised hand icon. And if you're connected through phone, please press *9 to indicate you'd like to comment. Once I call on you to speak, you'll be instructed to press *6 to unmute yourself. And you'll have 2 minutes to make your comment. I'm going to give it a minute to see if any hands are raised. Looks like we don't have any public comment for this agenda item. So we will move to the vote. So would anybody like to motion to approve the meeting summary?
I'll move to approve the meeting summary from September 1st, 2022.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion to adopt. I will call the roll so that everybody can vote. Lourdes Castro Ramirez,
Aye.
Dr. Markelli,
Aye.
Kathleen Allison,
Aye.
Tomas Aragon,
Aye.
Stephanie Clendenin,
Aye.
JC Cooper,
Aye.
Susan Damaris,
Aye.
Lisa Mongat,
Aye.
Vito Ambasciani,
Aye.
Kim Johnson,
Aye.
Tina Johnson Hall,
Aye.
Veronica Lewis,
Aye.
Tamika Moss,
Aye.
Tim Rainey, Nancy Robles,
Aye.
Rebecca Ruana Shaughnessy,
Aye.
Tony Tavares.
Aye.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Zach Olmsted.
Aye.
Thank you. And Joe Xavier.
Aye.
Perfect. We have 13-4. The motion passes. The meeting summary has been adopted. Okay, we can move on to the next agenda item.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. So as I've said, I'm very excited to get to facilitate this next agenda item. Council members, as you know, and you heard earlier, your co-chairs recently appointed 31 experts on homelessness from across the state to the newly formed Cal ICH Advisory Committee. The committee had its first meeting last month where members got to introduce themselves to one another. As part of the materials for this meeting, we sent you a memo that summarizes a bit about the committee members and provides a link to the list of their photos and bios on our website. We also, as you can see, invited the committee members to join our meeting today for this agenda item in order to facilitate a conversation that can help them guide their initial work as a committee. I'm going to start off this item by giving a brief overview on how the advisory committee was formed and its role in advising the council. Then we're going to do a Cal ICH meeting first, where we will conduct some online poll questions to get more information about the committee members who were able to attend today's meeting. Since the advisory committee welcome meeting was spent primarily on introductions, and we know many of our council members were able to listen into that meeting, we wanted to provide time for introductions in a different way today. For those who couldn't make the advisory committee's welcome meeting, you can view the recording on our meeting webpage. I highly recommend it. And while the committee is still just beginning their work, one of the first tasks they will take on will be to determine their priorities for the coming year. While the council will not determine exactly what these priorities are, we wanted to give council members a chance to weigh in on how the committee can share its expertise to support our goal of making homelessness rare, brief, and one-time. Before we jump into all of that, though, I want to give everyone a brief reminder about the history and context of the advisory committee. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, Cal-ICH was first established as the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council through Senate Bill 1380 in 2017. At that point, HCFC was made up of both staff and community members and was primarily responsible for overseeing the implementation of Housing First policies within state-funded programs, as well as identifying resources and delivering guidance to prevent and end homelessness. This first version of the council really started laying the groundwork for deep coordination across the state entities working to prevent and end homelessness. Last year, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 1220, which renamed us the California Interagency Council on Homelessness, or Cal-ICH, and restructured the state council. As you know, the new structure had two significant changes. First was state council membership. The state council is now made up of secretaries and directors of state agencies and departments, with 2 community members appointed by the legislature. To support this new state council structure, and to ensure the voices of experts outside the state remain involved in decision-making, the legislation also established this advisory committee to provide input and guidance to the council. On the next slide, we have our statute, a little bit from our statute from AB 1220. There we go, you can see it there. So according to AB 1220, the newly formed state council shall regularly seek guidance from and meet with an advisory committee. As you can see, statute stipulates that the co-chairs appoint a diverse committee with representation of people from a variety of backgrounds and expertise on issues related to homelessness, including people with lived experience of homelessness at different times in their lives. It also lays out a few required seats to be filled, and I'm happy to say that our advisory committee that we have reflects that diversity of background and has multiple people to fulfill each statutory seat. Broadly, the committee's core role is to advise and make recommendations on matters relating to the programs, responsibilities, or activities of the state council, including all of its member departments and agencies. Going forward, the committee will have both its own meetings, as well as have at least one member sit in on every state council meeting. To date, the advisory committee has only met once in order to introduce themselves, but will have regular meetings starting in 2023. The next step really for the advisory committee will be to determine what work they would like to initially prioritize for this year. After we get through this context and get some more information on the committee members, we'll open it up to state council members to discuss what types of guidance they hope to get from this group of experts that would help move our collective work forward. Next slide. To help guide these priorities and sort of bound them in the work that we do, I want to briefly talk about the state's action plan for preventing and ending homelessness, because it's the most comprehensive summary of the work that our state council member departments and agencies are doing to prevent and end homelessness. The action plan was originally adopted in March 2021 and is guided by the vision of making homelessness in California a rare, brief, and one-time experience. To achieve this, the plan calls for greater leadership from the state, purposeful, action-oriented coordination and alignment, and stronger collaborative partnerships with both state departments and communities at the local level. The plan spans fiscal years 2021, 21-22, and this year 22-23. The State Council adopted an updated version of this plan in September of this year to reflect more relevant activities for this fiscal year. As you can see on the next slide, the action plan organizes its activities into 5 broad action areas that cover interventions related to strengthening systems, addressing the needs of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, expanding access to safe and effective sheltering and interim housing, expanding access to permanent housing, and preventing homelessness. The updated plan includes more than 150 activities across our state council member departments and agencies, each with its own performance measures and timeframes. Cal-ICH staff report on progress towards these performance goals each year. The first report was released last November, with another one coming toward the end of this year. We will also begin work on a future iteration of the plan that takes us past this fiscal year. Additionally, the action plan calls for the creation of interagency working groups, which are charged with taking the priorities of the council and working together to make progress towards them. The State Funding and Programs Working Group is focused on identifying ways to ensure the funding and programs related to homelessness across our council member departments and agencies are well coordinated and aligned. And while the State Council does not have direct oversight over all the work listed in the action plan, it is responsible for ensuring that our collective work is coordinated and effective and provide policy recommendations on how to make it so, among other statutory goals. So we hope that the advisory committee will partner with the State Council in that work. Next slide, please. Before we move to the discussion portion of this agenda item, I'd like to do a bit more introduction of our wonderful committee members. As you can see here, we have 31 members of the committee, each with a different set of expertise they bring to this work. Today, we are lucky enough that many of them were able to attend the State Council meeting. Since, as I mentioned, we don't have time for each person to introduce themselves individually, I'd like to take a few minutes to engage the committee members that are here today and a few online polling questions to get a better sense of the type of work that they do. And just another quick plug that you can hear their introductions from the advisory committee welcome meeting on our website. All right, so in a moment, a member of our team will start an online poll for the advisory committee members who are here today to answer. These questions are meant to help us get a better sense of what type of work our committee members do so that council members don't need to respond to these questions. We're going to use a live polling website, again, first time ever, so you're seeing it here. And we can, with the purpose of allowing us all to view the results in real time. So please excuse any technical challenges as we do this. And so we will put the link into the chat for advisory committee members to see in a minute. And when you see that, you can click on that link.
Just 1 second. I am trying to copy it into the chat for y'all to have. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And then maybe this will be easier. So if you could scan the QR code or go to this link and type in the ID, you could find it this way.
So the link should be in the chat. And we will make sure to read out any results that come in as well. So let's wait till we have some folks that are able to access. Let us know if that link does not work. If you can't scan the QR code, you can just copy and paste that link that I pasted into the chat. Okay, we're already answering the question. So this is just for the advisory committee members to answer. And the first question we have here is, which type of work do you do? So I see we're getting a few answers in here. The options that we have are direct service provider or nonprofit, local government or COC, advocacy or philanthropy, research institution or other, and you can sort of type it into the Zoom chat and I will read it aloud. Seems like there's a few people having trouble getting on there. Let's see if we can get you that link. See, this is the technical difficulties part that I warned of. If you can't access it for whatever reason, feel free to type in the chat which one of these might apply to you too. I can read those out. Looks like we have lots of representation, about 50% of folks who've responded from direct service providers, about 23% from local government or COC, about 30% from advocacy or philanthropy, about 23% from research institutions. And I'm seeing advocacy in the chat. I'm seeing direct services, mental health in the chat. All right. Then there's the link again in that chat. See if that works for those. Let's give it another minute. This is just the first question. This is the practice. So try that link. All right, let's try to move to let's open up the next question and see if we get some more responses here as well. Oh, I see people are coming in. That's great. All right, now the second question here is, which subpopulations do you primarily serve or advocate for? Youth and young adults, families with dependent children, older adults, people involved in the justice system, people with physical or behavioral health needs, veterans, survivors of gender-based violence, populations overrepresented in homelessness or other. You can type it into the chat. And you can select all, right? Seems like the people going so far. I'm in the chat, I'm seeing youth, I'm seeing all. Great. So what I'm seeing here is that about half of the folks that have answered serve youth or young adults, 85% families with dependent children. We got 71% older adults, over half now people involved in the justice system, 80% people with physical or behavioral health needs, about 2/3 serve veterans, over half serve survivors of gender-based violence, 3/4 serving populations overrepresented in homelessness. And then people posting in the chat here, tribal members of all of those categories experiencing homelessness. Thank you. Great, and we got a few more responses this time. So with every question, we're going to get a few more responses. Great, and we'll move to our third question now. And this is a little pop quiz based on what we just said, but take your time to read through these. So which action area committee members from the action plan, do you feel your work falls into? Action area 1, strengthening systems. Action area 2, addressing the needs of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. Action area 3, expanding capacity to provide safe and effective sheltering and interim housing. Action area 4, access to permanent housing. Action area 5, preventing homelessness. It could be all again, but just interested to see. In the chat, I'm seeing action area 1 and 5, all 2 and 5. On the screen, I'm seeing action area 1 far and away 88% of folks that are responding say that their work falls into action area 1, strengthening systems. 64, 61% unsheltered homelessness, which is action area 2. About 44% in action area 3 around safe and effective sheltering and interim housing. About 83% permanent housing, and just over half preventing homelessness, and then some more alls in the chat. All right, I think we mostly successfully did that polling experiment. Thank you all for your participation. So I think we can stop sharing that screen. Great, and we can share the presentation again.
Sorry, 1 second.
No problem. And so thanks to everyone for their participation. Really appreciate the chance to just get to know a little bit more about you all, a little bit more about your work and the populations that you're serving, and sort of how you feel you fit into the action plan. And so now that we have the context for the role of the advisory committee and who our members are, we're going to move into our discussion. So in a minute, there will be a question up on the screen that we want council members to think about. And, you know, having just heard about the expertise our committee members bring into this work, and given the commitments that we have made in our action plan, we want to know from you, you know, what types of guidance might we call upon this committee members, this committee of experts for, in order to inform our work as a council. And when the committee members reconvene next, they'll be able to sort of use these ideas as fodder for what type of work they would like to prioritize in the coming year. And so while council members think on this question, I want to first pass it to our co-chairs to provide their thoughts about what guidance they wish to see from the advisory committee members. And then we'll open it up to any other council members who wish to respond. And if it helps, I believe we may have, by magic, the results from those polls that we just took on the next slide, and we can share those. So I will first pass it to our secretaries, maybe starting with Secretary Castro Ramirez.
That's great. Thank you, Cody. I felt as if this exercise of survey and polls, it felt very much like a team building exercise. And so thank you all for pulling that together. I want to go back to the action plan, and you know, just from the overwhelming sort of interest in action area number 1, where we had almost 90% of folks interested in that area. As we think about the state programs that are focused on addressing homelessness, whether it's in the housing space or in the services space, I'd be interested in hearing from advisory committee members on how state programs can better align with local efforts, or essentially where are state programs missing the opportunity to be better aligned or impactful at the local level. And maybe I'll turn it over to my co-chair and see if we can hear from him. I don't know if he's still on. I can't see you, Secretary.
We may have had some internet issues, but when he
Cody, can you hear me
here.
now?
Yeah, great. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. Look at that. All the magic happening with Zoom. Successful transition to phone. So, you know, one of the things that I really value from the advisory committee is going to be sort of the real life experience of trying to put all of these dots together on the ground. In a bit, we're going to hear about some exciting things that are happening within the Department of Healthcare Services. I know many of the departments and agencies that are doing this work and trying to connect dots are doing it from the seats we currently hold and have. But we always benefit from that real experience of what's working and what's not working, what's administratively hard that we should work to improve that could really clear the way for some improved outcomes in so many of the spaces. And, you know, it's a complicated web, but we are doing so many exciting things. And I think that expertise from so many of the folks that I know by name and having a chance to hear from them and understand how we can improve what we're doing on the ground, I think is going to be critical. And so I'm always grateful for having this input and expertise so we can push ourselves to be a little better and smarter and actually do more than we otherwise would have without that input. So similar to Lourdes's point about furthering some of those important goals in the state's action plan, I see the opportunity to not just connect the dots, but do it in a way that makes them a little bit more impactful than it would have otherwise been.
Great, thank you, Secretary Galley. And I see that Veronica has her hand up, so I'll let her go next. And if other folks, I know lots of council members have thoughts on this, so feel free to raise your hand and I'll just sort of call on you in the order that I see you.
Thanks, Cody. Congratulations to all the advisory committee members. And thank you, Cody and Giselle, for the creative way that we got to know them a little bit better. I really appreciate Dr. Galley's chief dot connectors comment, because one of the main reasons I'm excited to be a part of this council is to really figure out how we start to minimize some of the fragmentation, the undue burden on not only the people obviously that are experiencing homelessness, but organizations like ours, many of the folks on the advisory committee I'm familiar with. And so it would really be helpful. And I know that many of them work across different systems in the same way that I do. And so it would really be helpful. And I would hope that one of their priorities would be trying to provide some advisory capacity about where are the key system disconnects across the departments or agencies represented on Cal ICH, and provide some potential resolutions to start to address those things, either where there's redundancies, conflicting policies, you know, that's what I mean by, you know, like a coordination. So I think that should be a key piece of the work that they do.
Yeah, thank you. Carmina?
Yes, it's so funny that the advisory group brought up action plan area 1. The California Department of Education has a couple of different areas where we are either the lead or supporting and coordinating with other state agencies. But when we took a second and third look at the action plan, there was other items where we saw we could fit that maybe sometimes people don't know about. So probably just like our advisory, or like Ms. Lewis was sharing, I don't know that everybody knows everything that we do. So at the department, we do collect data. Where when you're putting together guidelines around multifamily housing, we do collect data on our students who are experiencing homelessness under the double definition, considering and keeping families together. There was a lot around grants and resources and local grantees. We do have already a system that includes county offices of education and many districts, both at the federal and state requirements. Also, a lot of disaster preparedness for all of our county offices and districts. Any student who or their family who is displaced due to natural disasters has to move away. We did a lot of work through Butte County when the Camp Fire went through there, and ensuring that our students did not have disruption in their academic access. That is the one constant, is teachers, friends, meals. And so there's a lot of considerations where I think education can be plugged in that sometimes people don't know about. So I'm really excited to hear that a lot of our advisory brought up the action plan activity 1, and really excited because some of the faces and names are very familiar. So it's always so exciting to have partners to speak up together.
Thank you. Any other council members? Oh, I see Rebecca has her hand raised. Great. Oh yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Cody, and thank you for the advisory committee members. This is so, I'm so grateful to have your lived experience and expertise to really contribute to this conversation. What we have been struggling with, so just a little bit of introduction. I come from the California Community Colleges system. I'm here representing our 3 segments of higher education. So that's roughly 2.5 million students we're serving in the system. And talking about navigating kind of the fragmented programs and systems, especially at the local level. So what we're seeing at a state level, and I want to say because it's closer to the legislature, it's a little bit more organized, right? The further away it is from, I feel like, the money source, it gets confusing at the local level. So really hope to kind of learn from the local navigation challenges to kind of then reflect what we can do at the system level to address that. So that's one piece of it. And then also really thinking about population specific challenges, because when we think about different populations, their challenges are different. And if we can start to think about, if we're looking at focus on one population, thinking about then how do we leverage programs differently, multiple programs differently to really serve that population, and bring in kind of, I also see research capacity and expertise from the advisory. How do we then think about what are the evidence-based interventions and how are these programs to really support that? I think we can really learn a lot from that type of experience. So those are kind of the things that we really hope to learn from the advisory. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Damaris.
Hi there, I'm Susan DeMorris, the Director of the California Department of Aging, and a very warm welcome to all of the advisory committee members. I got to watch you be sworn in, and I'm just in awe of your credentials and your expertise and experience, and I expect to learn a lot from all of you. And I'm really impressed with the cross-section of populations that you all represent, including older adults, a high number. So what I would look for is where there are success stories and examples that we can lift up with a particular population, and giving older adults as an example. When you learn of something that is working locally, even if it's small, a small sample size, it's good to be able to analyze why that is working and what the secret ingredients are that are making things come together for a population. So don't be shy about sharing success stories, even if they're small scale. We can learn a lot from those as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Moss.
Thank you, Cody, and welcome to the advisory committee members. It's great to see so many friends and colleagues in the fight with us. I guess I just wanted to lift up an opportunity for us to really get insight from the committee about creative ways that the state departments can not only better work together, but can get innovative around resources and strategies that may not be so obvious around issues related to homelessness and housing insecurity, but that could be exploited to help us really think about collective outcomes. I think to Councilmember Lewis's point around the fragmentation, a state as big as California, and being able to sort of hold the vision for our collective agenda and how that actually shows up on the ground is really difficult to do. So I think figuring out the ways that we can tackle the most significant barriers that local jurisdictions and communities are facing, and frankly, for the council to really figure out how to respond to those barriers collectively with all of our power and talent, I think could be really amazing. So I really look forward to working in collaboration with the committee and figuring out how we leverage the resources of the council, as well as all of the real-time salient information that we're getting from our committee members, and how we can not just do information sharing, but in fact, apply some of the recommendations toward outcomes that we all want to see. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Zach Olmsted?
Thanks, Cody. I think a similar sentiment is, are there specific programs between our departments that would make sense to link up? So just to go a little bit beyond what connection means, tell us the specific programs that would make sense to link up for efficiency purposes or to maximize impact. And then we could obviously, of course, begin to explore how to do that. That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Lewis?
Yeah, one more thing I think that will be helpful, again, knowing many of the folks on the advisory committee work across multiple systems. It would be really helpful if from the advisory committee, and ultimately the goal would be resolution, right, or suggestions, but it would be really helpful, I think, if that committee that has so much expertise, breadth of knowledge, can help really demonstrate for our council how some of these policies, agency and State Department policies, and funding guidelines translate on the ground, right? Because I think there's a disconnect. I brought that up, in a few different cases, and the few meetings that we've had as a council. But I think being able to articulate like what some of the decisions being made at department level means when it hits the ground. And so many of the folks that are on this advisory committee not only oversee their organizations, but they sit at multiple tables across their counties and cities. And so they not only are they experiencing it from a system level, what some of the challenges are, but also as it trickles down to them as organizations, they have insight as well. And so I think it would be really helpful if you can paint the picture for some of the most problematic, I'm gonna just say it that way, or challenging policies coming out of the different state departments, and what that means on the ground, and how some possible solutions to start to reimagine some of the policies and funding guidelines, and how resources are allocated.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from council members? Any other thoughts on this? Councilmember Clendenin?
Thank you. And it was very nice to see the, and I'm sorry, I'm Stephanie Clendenin. I'm the director of the Department of State Hospitals, and we serve individuals who are have serious behavioral health conditions that are often come to us through the criminal justice system. And so it was very nice to see in the survey the experiences of those of you that are either serving that population or have some of your own lived experiences. And so I think when I think about the work that we're doing, and we're engaged in a really significant effort over the course of the next couple of years to really kind of transform the treatment that we provide, and really move individuals out of the state hospitals, and actually move them into community treatment and provide diversion opportunities from the criminal justice system to really help be able to connect individuals to services in their community in a different way than we ever have before, so that we can help individuals transition and hopefully avoid what we've been seeing largely over is a significant cycling of individuals in and out of the criminal justice system. And so we really, when I think about the work that we do, just, as we are starting to engage in this, we are new in this area, particularly thinking about delivering services in the community, and we're working closely with our local partners. So I think just thinking about, as we start to build out housing, and we start to look at local engagement and the services that individuals are need to be successful in the community, that just being able to leverage your experience and expertise and thoughts around the work that we're doing.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, thank you. And I also want to welcome and appreciate the advisory committee for your service with us and your partnership with us. I want to ditto Councilmember Lewis's comments that what is getting in your way? I mean, I think that is the spirit in which we are all coming to the space to understand what the barriers are, what we need to be thinking through in terms of policy regulation, in addition to the resources and the commitment that we have in this space. So I want to absolutely appreciate and echo that comment. And then I'd also say this council in its last meeting adopted a principle around how we engage with those with lived experience in communities. And so I would invite advisory committees to invite us to be in community with you and let us see that in person on the ground. We are very much interested in, and I've had that opportunity, and it's just been so valuable for us as we are continuing to identify ways in which we can address gaps in community. So please ask that the advisory committee share with us those great opportunities for us to see. And again, let us know where you're hitting roadblocks along the way.
Thank you. Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you. I really echo many of the things that people said before me, but just wanted to raise up one in particular. I think oftentimes when we, create policy at the state level, we have the best intentions of how it will impact and be delivered on the ground. And so what I ask the committee to be is our eyes and ears on the ground of how is that being interpreted, implemented on the ground, and how do we need to hold ourselves accountable to kind of tweak it, make sure that it is meeting the objective of what we're actually trying to achieve. Because I promise you, no policy has been written once and it be successful. And so trusted partners out in the community, being able to help inform that, keep us true to what we're trying to achieve, and that feedback, especially with the depth and breadth of the various populations that you are all representing. I think that's just an important voice. And so I look forward to hearing and engaging with you all and learning from your experience to make sure that we are shaping a better policy at the state level, and look forward to that partnership with you all.
Great, thank you. And I see one more hand up here, and I'll just say, just for committee members to be aware, no need to be taking copious notes. I know you're getting a lot of information here. We will do the work to summarize what we're hearing here and use it as sort of fodder for our first discussion at our first advisory committee meeting. I know we only have a few minutes left of this agenda item. After Councilmember Lewis makes her comment, we'd love to hear if there's any sort of overarching feedback from the committee members about what you've heard from council members, your thoughts about sort of that direction that you've heard about, if any of the committee members have any thoughts on that. Councilmember Lewis?
Thank you. I just want to highlight the prevention piece of the work that's unfortunately, because of the cost of living, it is not scaled to the level that it should be. And so I think it would be, many of the committee members have experience understanding the different scenarios that have brought people to their housing crisis, in particular, lots of the families with children that are made up of all kinds of, comprised of all different compositions. And so I think that prioritizing, really providing some input to this body related to how to scale up or think about prevention in a different way, potentially partly with some of the Callahan stuff, but I think that that's just something that is needs to be scaled up at a level that, we're nowhere close to. And I think that the advisory committee's expertise can really support that, in particular, again, related to households with children in them.
Great, thank you. In these last few minutes, any committee members have any sort of feedback or thoughts on what they just heard from the council members? I know there's a lot to process, so no pressure to have something fully formed, but just wanted to open it up and see what you thought. Great, I see committee member Coleman.
Thanks for that, Cody, and good afternoon, committee or council members. It's good to be with all of you today. Carolyn Coleman with the League of California Cities, and I just wanted to say how refreshing it was to hear from all of you about the importance of finding ways to reduce barriers, wanting feedback on what's working, what's not working, and I've heard the phrase fragmentation quite a bit on this call from so many of you. So certainly not necessarily great topics to hear about, because these are certainly barriers to us doing the good work that we want to do in our state. But I'm heartened to hear that we all seem to be focused on eliminating those barriers so that good policy and good funding does actually yield the kind of results that we all want at the local level for so many of our families who are suffering and unhoused today. So I appreciate the opportunity to hear from all of you, and I'm looking forward to continuing my work with the committee to inform your conversations. And thank you for the time to speak.
Yeah, thank you. So I see a few hands here. We'll take these hands that are up before we move to our next agenda item. Committee member Vincent.
Thank you for the time, and I'll be really brief. I think this might be more a question for Cody or the council members. Like, so as the council members were asking these questions and I wrote them down, I was like, I have so many ideas. I could just talk about this for like an hour. And I know that that's not what we have time for. So I guess my question to Cody is, could there be a way to capture this information in a different setting? Because I have a lot to say. And just as like a little bit of background in the work that I do, I was just thinking this as you were talking about state programs. I access HDAP, CalWorks Housing Support, Bringing Families Home, Home Safe, Project Home Key, Project Room Key, HAP, KESH, Rapid Rehousing, and we're working on CalAIM, ECM, and community supports within the next couple of months. All of those things have reporting that I'm responsible for. All of those things have different definitions of homelessness, different definitions of how the funds can be used. And I still had a request today from a client for a $35 application fee so that he could apply for housing, and I couldn't figure out how to get that $35 fee paid. So those are the kinds of things that I have some great ideas of how to just eliminate that craziness, but this is too long of a conversation for this right now. So back to you, Cody. I'm happy to talk more at the right time.
Yes, definitely. And thank you for bringing that up. We will definitely be talking about that at our advisory committee meetings, right? That is the place where we will take a lot of this information that we heard today and figure out, like, okay, we heard some of their priorities, what they would like to hear from us, the council members, like, how do we take that and make that into our priorities as a committee, right? So thank you for that. That's great. Committee member Dimas Peinado.
Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Charlene Dimas Peinado with Wellness. We are a trauma-informed organization founded in 1924. Our focus is children up to the age of 25. 5 years ago, we expanded our core services to include transitional and permanent supportive housing for transition age youth. As many of you know, these are young people aging out of the foster care system. Anywhere from 10 to 12% have young children or are babies. And they come with a history of generational trauma, don't have any network of support, and have severe mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and oftentimes are already involved in very high-risk activities. When the question was asked, how can state programs better align at the local level? Just some recommendations as a provider and how we navigate these systems is just reducing the bureaucratic system, streamlining processes on how we access the dollars and provide those services. Oftentimes, just qualifying these young people for those services have many barriers. And also just flexibility as it relates to the generosity of local match. we have to be able to build infrastructure capacity to provide those services. And I always say that the people providing the services at the front line matter the most, because they're out there every single day dealing with those high-risk situations. And many of us know those situations are very complex, but we cannot build this workforce if we do not have the ability to draw down those funding and provide the competitive salaries that we need to provide, especially here in Southern California when the cost of living is so high. So many of us are being impacted by turnover if we're not able to, pay our staff the salaries that they need to take care of their own families, and so that they too do not become at risk for being unhoused as well. So just again, the opportunity to draw down more of those local match so that we can expand our operating budgets and build that infrastructure that truly can meet the needs of the population we're talking about. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So I see a few more hands here. We'll keep going, and Committee Member Wilson will be our last comment here. So Committee Member Mangano. Committee Member Mangano, you have your hand up. I don't know if you want to make a comment. If you'd like to, now.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. Now I
you're
can.
good, yeah.
Thank you. The chronic problem, it seems. First of all, I want to thank the state agency members and directors for their forthrightness and the avenues that they're offering to be helpful, just as they can be helpful to us in our work. Perhaps there's a give back from us to their work. And certainly in the work I've done to advance HomeKey, to me, that provides a potential laboratory of integration of things of health, employment, sense of belonging, equity, trauma-informed care, and other issues that we're concerned about. So looking at HomeKey as that laboratory, I think that would be a helpful thought in terms of that integration we've looked at. And then finally, I was especially impressed with what JC had to say, JC Cooper, that how is a policy implemented on the ground? How is it working? Is it in the way or is it helpful? And on that, I would say we have something to learn on that, specifically in terms of the HomeKey rollout, how well that rollout has gone, the learning that has been achieved through that rollout, and then the modification of the next iteration of HomeKey, and now a continued evolution of HomeKey looking to the next round. So there is something right within state government, I think, that speaks to that notion of how things are being implemented and how feedback can be achieved and be brought up and through a program to make it more effective for the field. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee Member Stevens.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you. I just wanted to express what this actually feels to hear what your desires are and how, what areas in which we can support. I'm extremely impressed with a lot of what I heard, and I won't share it all. But what I want to make certain that I say is around examples of success stories, uplifting of older adults. What I heard, and I don't want to mess your name up, Council Member Stephanie, around what I heard as you were speaking and what I saw was what we have here in Los Angeles that I push so much for is around the criminal justice system and those with mental health challenges or disabilities, this ODR. Additionally, what was said around what is getting in your way. And I saw an opportunity to collaborate, eyes and ears on the ground. I have been looking for anybody to want me as eyes and ears on the ground. So I'm just super excited, and thank you, Member Lewis, for prevention and prioritizing. I'm super excited for the work that we have before us, and I just can't tell you how that is healing from the inside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee Member Salas?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the council members. I echo a lot of the sentiments of the previous speakers. I wanted to focus on one thing. It was really easy to bash the state on a number, whenever something goes wrong, but really we need to make sure that we focus and celebrate when things go right. And I really want to applaud the state's leadership for the things that it has done recently. Mr. Mangano mentioned one on Project Home Key and the ability to really actively engage and recalibrate and pivot whenever you need to course correct. We had another example with rent relief and Secretary Castro Ramirez's incredible team that actively engaged the stakeholders, created something, but didn't just leave it at that. They actively engaged those stakeholders throughout the way and then course corrected and recalibrated. And that program took off to be probably the most successful program in the country. So really, I think the state has demonstrated its willingness not only to get groups like this together, but to really do something with that information and recalibrate. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Great, thank you. And we have time for one more comment. If I see other people with their hands up, if you'd like to share, you can put your comment in the chat and we'll make sure to record it and share with our council members as well. I'm sorry, we're a little over time, but thank you all for all these great comments. So Committee Member Wilson.
Thank you, everybody, for having us here today. I'm really excited to know that people across the state are all hyper-focused on this issue. We're all impacted in some ways by homelessness, whether it be through lived experience or family members or just, living check to check, as one of the other committee members had mentioned their staff experience regularly. So the one thing that I wanted to bring up in this space is that I encourage you to think about our formula allocations, because the way it is structured now, it almost incentivizes homelessness to exist. When the numbers go down, so does your money. And our community has been fighting very hard to end homelessness. We had a 20% reduction from 17 to 19. We had a 15% reduction from 19 to 2022. And now we are facing a reduction in our funding. So we are scrambling, trying to figure out how are we going to keep all of the services up that we had stood up with the first few rounds of funding that has put us on this path to reduce homelessness. And that's all that I really wanted to say in this space. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you all, really, really appreciate it. First of all, thank you for bearing with us through that slightly clunky polling system that we put up there. It was really, actually, I think very helpful to see, a little bit more about all the advisory committee members' work. Also, just, thank you for that rich discussion. Our team is going to work over the next few weeks to sort of collect the topics that we heard and bring it to the next advisory committee meeting to really help guide our discussion on priorities and how we hope to, work with the council for our shared goal of, preventing and ending homelessness. So we appreciate everyone's input today. Advisory committee members, thanks again for joining. Thank you for taking your time. A second meeting in under a month. Really, really appreciate that. And you're welcome to leave the meeting now, or if you'd like to stay on, please feel free to do so. And our staff will switch your role to attendee. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate the time. And I will now turn it to Co-Chair Gali for the next agenda item.
Great, Cody, thanks. And thanks to everybody. That was a very rich discussion, super informative. Appreciate the advisory committee's perspectives and just endorsement of the sentiment of the council members' kind of approach to the advice and really trying to do better with the programs we have the privilege to oversee at the state level, but really making it the magic happen locally, I think, is the key. So for the next agenda item and period of time, I want to introduce J.C. Cooper, who really needs no introduction, but our state Medicaid director and one of our leaders at the Department of Healthcare Services with Michelle Boss, director there. And just an opportunity to present the great work that has happened to really transform Medicaid as an important tool to focus on the traditional view of health, but also those aspects that drive health, those social drivers, including housing and homelessness, and the connection to the justice system, the connection to the child welfare system, the connection to so many of the systems that we are all concerned of and see as levers to drive the outcomes around homelessness. So for about 15 minutes, JC, thank you for presenting and an overview of a number of the important efforts. These are not the only ones. There's many, many more, and how they link, I think, is really up to us to create those linkages and have that conversation after JC presents. Turning to Corinne, thank you, Corinne, for facilitating the conversation with the council on where these connections are already and where we might find additional connections down the road. So really excited for the committee, the council, to dig into this issue. And JC, without taking any more time, turn it over to you for the presentation.
Great, thank you. If we can move the slides ahead, that would be great. We can go to the next slide. All right, so I'm so pleased to be speaking in regards to CalAIM. Of course, you know, CalAIM is a multi-year initiative that kind of touches almost every part of our Medi-Cal program, you know, from our physical health, behavioral health, our dental programs, our strategies around long-term services and supports. It's broad. So today I'm going to narrow that focus in regards to the intersection with housing and homelessness and the work that we are all doing. I think one thing to just ground us in, though, is, you know, CalAIM is really around making sure that we are building a full continuum of care for all of our Medi-Cal beneficiaries. And one thing that we have noticed is that since, you know, the ACA expanded Medi-Cal to a large number of adults, and we don't feel like we have built the full continuum of care for some of those individuals. Speaking in particular around people experiencing homelessness. So we really, this is about a whole person care approach to addressing everything, looking at our population strategies and really making sure that everybody has an opportunity to be healthy in our program. And so it's really focused on implementing a number of initiatives across the various sectors of our program, really focused on ultimately improving health outcomes, but making sure we're addressing the various social drivers that may ultimately be impacting someone's ability to be healthy. Next slide. So this is, you know, most people on this call today or presentation have heard this, but I just want to stress it because sometimes people say, why is Medicaid coming into the space of housing and or homelessness services and supports? And clearly, I think there has been so much focus around the fact that, you know, social economic factors and physical environments have such an impact on people's health and being able to be healthy. So even if you look at it here, it says, you know, essentially the number you usually see is around 80%. But even if you only looked at the socioeconomic factors and the physical environment factors, that's still 50%. Then giving the others to behavioral health, kind of health behaviors and health care. And there's so much data that shows just at least one unmet social need is associated with increased rates of depression, diabetes, ED overuse, and no-show rates in clinics. We also know by looking at other states and countries where we do have a higher ratio of social to health spend, the statistically they are having higher health outcomes. Sorry about that. So we know that this is the worthwhile in regards to these two intersections. Next slide. So this is kind of applying that within our Medi-Cal population. So when we look at our overall Medi-Cal population, we know that about 5% of our enrollees are driving the majority of our costs. So, or the highest cost, I think it's around 50%. It's a significant amount of our costs. And we know that there's so many factors that drive into that. We know, for example, people experiencing homelessness have higher rates of diabetes, hypertension, HIV, often results in longer hospital stays, higher readmission rates, emergency department visits. We know that about 20% of Californians are food insecure. We know that oftentimes our most complex that are driving up overall costs also are navigating multiple systems across Medi-Cal. So we know that there's a clear intersection in need, and often the unmet social needs are really even more impactful in regards to being able to impact someone's ability to be healthy. As you would imagine, someone experiencing homelessness, I imagine whether they get to their preventative visit is not the first thing that they are focused on every single day. And so we really feel like we have to be intentional in regards to what we are providing and the services we're providing. Next slide. So this is also connected to much of our work in regards to, we really feel that social drivers of health is really one of the biggest keys for us to address equity work. We know that some of our health disparities that we have been analyzing here at the department really cross over so many areas. But we also know that those various factors are disproportionately impacting different parts of our population. For example, we do know that the Black and African American community represents around 39% of Californians experiencing homelessness compared to 13%. We know that Californians of color have been disproportionately impacted by both the economic and the health effects of COVID-19. And so we also have seen various food insecurities. For example, in Los Angeles, 40% of Hispanic Latinos and 39% of Black and African Americans are experiencing food insecurity compared to only 21% of non-Hispanic white households. So it's not just that we think that there's an intersection between social drivers of health and healthcare, that's clear, but there's a huge crossover with that work and us doing our responsibility of looking at the intersections from an equity lens and making sure that we are doing everything we can to close these various disparities across the Medi-Cal program to the degree that we can influence some of those opportunities. Next slide. So there are two kind of main pieces. CalAIM is multifaceted. Today, I'm going to focus on a few core pieces to kind of set the stage for the conversation. Two of the pieces within this initiative, one is called Enhanced Care Management, and one is called Community Supports. And I will break down each of these in more detail on the other slides. But they're two kind of cornerstones of how we are really trying to break down the walls of healthcare and meet people where they are. We know that that is the only way we're really going to be able to address some of these various social drivers of health and really feel like that is the only way to engage people experiencing homelessness as we forge into kind of a new territory than what we've historically done on the Medicaid side. Next slide. So I'll start with enhanced care management. In enhanced care management, there are a number of population of focus. We have people experiencing homelessness. We have people with serious mental illness or substance use disorder, people in need of various long-term services and supports who are in a skilled nursing facility trying to transition to the community or to avoid that skilled nursing facility stay, children with complex medical conditions. There's a list of our populations of focus. But really the intent is to be the highest touch. We have what we call basic care management, complex care management, and then the very top of that is enhanced care management. And this is really intended for populations who are needing to navigate multiple delivery systems within the Medi-Cal program. They are your most acute, your most vulnerable, and often needing a higher touch in regards to the engagement needed by whether it's a social worker or the clinical team working with them. And really the idea here is that they're meeting people where they are in the community. So if that means they're meeting them on the street or in a shelter, they can also, of course, meet in the doctor's office or emergency room department. The idea is that we are breaking down those walls and meeting people where they are. And you'll see there some of the core services for somebody who's in enhanced care management, comprehensive assessment and plan. Really, the idea is that there's one person coordinating all of the services across the various delivery systems. Even if that means that they are just coordinating with other care or case managers, the idea is taking that burden off of the member and having that individual really coordinate that care across the delivery system. Next slide. This is really just to give you an idea of some of our criteria. I would just flag adults went live in January of 2022 in different counties and everyone statewide by July. And then in July of 2023, we're launching the Children and Youth and Families Experiencing Homelessness, and would just say that the definitions are similar, but the children, youth, and families is a broader definition. It includes housing instability, such as living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, or camping grounds, or anyone who's doing kind of couch surfing. So it is a broader definition for children, youth, and families. And more information can be found on DHCS's website in regards to the eligibility criteria for enhanced care management. Next slide. Also wanted to just give everyone an overview around the different community supports. So here you'll see the full list of 14 community supports. Essentially, these are various supports that we have deemed to be medically appropriate, cost-effective alternatives to other services that you may receive. There also is an intersection with these to things that would, potentially reduce hospitalization, skilled nursing facility admission, emergency department use, and it can be both preventive or an immediate a replacement of those services. And really, this is our way of kind of wrapping around services from our base kind of Medi-Cal benefits to provide various opportunities for people to live healthier and happier lives. Things that you would normally potentially think about, Medi-Cal not covering, like housing support and services. You can go to the next slide, because I'll walk through the various pieces that really have the intersection in regards to our conversations here today. So we are covering housing transition and navigation services, housing deposits, housing tenancy and sustaining services. So once someone is housed, helping make sure that they can stay housed. We're also covering various recovery focused housing. So recuperative care, or what some people call as medical respite, really a short-term kind of residential care to members who may have been in an inpatient stay, needing to be discharged, but need a place to heal and to have additional care, but don't have a home to go to, right? So if someone experiencing homelessness could be discharged from an inpatient stay directly into a recuperative care setting. And we cover that for up to 90 days. We also cover short-term post-hospitalization housing, and that is for up to 6 months. And you can double those up. For example, you could have someone immediately transition into recuperative care and transition from recuperative care to short-term post-hospitalization housing. And so those are jointly together real opportunities for us to work with someone, to engage with an enhanced care management provider, to connect them to various services, get them connected with vouchers, and ultimately the goal is getting connected to housing. And so really important. But I also want to flag a few other ones. We have medically supportive foods, which is really critical. We had to negotiate here, so we only get 2 meals a day, but really that focus around medically supportive food and nutrition services being available for people, as well as day habilitation. Really, this is for kind of urban hubs or community places where you can have individuals there to assist in self-help, socialization, adaptive skills, job seeking individuals, and really being out in the community to engage people, as well as sobering centers. Next slide. So I won't go into much detail here, but we did want to give you a flavor of the different ways that we are incentivizing this change. As you would imagine, introducing these types of new benefits into our program, there are a lot of new players at the table. There are a lot of infrastructure that has to be built. Community-based organizations are not used to billing for Medi-Cal services often. It varies, of course. And so we wanted to incentivize this change, this partnership between our managed care plans and our community partners, whether that's counties, CBOs, those that are doing this work. And so we did that through a number of ways. One, which is our CalAIM incentive program. You'll see some examples of here of directly how we were trying to incentivize different pieces. You know, things where we had the managed care plan, if they were doing outreach and engagement for people experiencing homelessness, or people getting enrolled in enhanced care management or these various community supports. And we even were very intentional in regards to some of the disparities we're seeing, where we're paying a higher incentive if, for example, they have specific programs, approaches, or models to focus on the Black and African American community, given the disparities that we are seeing there within the homelessness population. And so those are just some examples of, you know, how we are driving some incentives. Next slide. And I'll go pretty fast because I know we want to get to conversations, but hopefully everybody has the slides for being available after. We also launched what's called PATH, providing access and transforming health. And this is $1.8 billion where we are really doing direct grants from the department to community-based organizations, county providers, public hospital systems who've been doing this work for so long to really build up that infrastructure. And so this is grants to be able to hire staff, to update your electronic medical records, to really build up, or say you're providing enhanced care management and you do that for around 100 people today, but you want to double your footprint or triple your footprint. We really know that that can be hard for providers to take that risk on. And so we are doing direct grants to help with that build of this infrastructure across the state of California, because we know we have rural and frontier areas of the state that really need that type of assistance. And you'll see here that we're also going to be releasing a technical assistance marketplace. We're going to be doing some local collaboration planning. All of those pieces are rolling out in 2023, and we're really excited about that being available. Next slide. We also have been doing a lot around street medicine policies. So we actually released all of our guidance this week. Some was released prior, but all of the final guidance is out, which we're really excited about. We've released guidance in regards to presumptive eligibility, how you can get someone enrolled onto Medi-Cal quickly to get them the services that they need if they are not enrolled into Medi-Cal. Ultimately, you do need to follow up with the full Medi-Cal application, but really information around presumptive eligibility for people experiencing homelessness. We've also updated our system with multiple codes to make sure people who are providing street medicine can bill for these services. Really critical while people are still experiencing homelessness to make sure we are getting them access to services in the community. And so we have released a number of codes to make sure people can bill those if they're providing them in shelters, mobile units, and out on the streets. We also released some guidance to our managed care plans in regards to, how they can better partner with street medicine providers, specifically around them becoming a primary care provider, as well as some contracting options for our managed care plans to really just make sure they can provide that service. And specifically making sure FQHCs understand it is allowable for you to provide these services outside of the four walls and get paid your PPS rate, a really important piece for people to understand. Next slide. So when it comes to the Housing and Homelessness Incentive Program, this is a large initiative where we are really working with our managed care plans. We've talked about it in this group before, but really working with them to work closely with our local homeless continuum of care. Really, it's around building that infrastructure, capacity, and partnerships. We're really wanting to make sure we're connecting those partnerships at the local level between our managed care plans. The main purpose of these funds is partnership in building infrastructure, as well as getting people housed and keeping people housed. So managed care plans were required to work with their local partners to submit a local homelessness plan in August, and then they had to submit an investment plan to the state. How are they investing with their local partners to meet these bold goals that we had within this 2-year incentive program, and making sure that those dollars and partnerships are going to those providers who are going to help them meet those goals. Next slide. Here, I would just flag that one of the pieces we're most proud of is the fact that when community supports rolled out, it is voluntary for managed care plans, but we are excited to say that we have a managed care plan offering at least one housing focused community support in every single county across the state of California. And it is the most picked up community support that we have available of all, and most are providing at least 2 housing support pieces. So we're really excited about that. We also had, over 200 plus applications, 231 applications coming in for PATH funding. So we're really hoping to get some of that funding out to our local partners. Next slide. So this, hopefully I'll be able to kind of just tee up as we go into the discussion as well. While there has been a lot of progress made, these are new partnerships for everybody across the state. So as we phase this in and bring this up, we are doing listening tours across the state. We are talking to providers. We have sub work groups to really get feedback in regards to the community supports in ECM in particular as well, with people experiencing homelessness. We also have been tweaking our policies and procedures along this way and looking for ways that we can standardize and or provide some more direction to our managed care plans to be successful in this. We're also really excited to get the grant dollars out. And the one thing I would flag, and you heard it from Mark even at the beginning of this conversation today, we are doing a really good job of kind of getting things moving, getting CBOs on board, getting the transition services up and running. But as I've been talking to community-based organizations doing this work across the state of California, the biggest thing that I'm hearing is even if they can get into transition services, we're really struggling with connecting people. Even if they have a voucher, many are getting vouchers who are getting enhanced care management and these various community supports, but we're really struggling with connecting them to a housing unit. So that is one of our big focuses and things that I think we can really figure out about how we partner at both the federal, the state, and the local level to connect these people who have so many resources around them and support to be successful, to get them into that housing. That is the goal of all of these supports. So hopefully we'll be able to dig into that at some point as a council. And next slide. The last one we just wanted to kind of tee up, we are still negotiating this with the federal government, but it really brings all the puzzle pieces of the various parts that I just mentioned. This is really where we are focused on the justice involved individuals. So we are proposing to do a 90-day in-reach of services. What that means is for all prisons, jails, and juvenile facilities across the state of California, providing Medi-Cal services 90 days prior to release, really focusing on behavioral health linkages, making sure they get connected to enhanced care management or community support so people aren't being released from incarceration into homelessness, for example. And so we really are excited about rolling this out in 2023, 2024 and forward. This is kind of our next step in regards to bringing all of these various pieces together. And so I'm sorry I went over a few minutes of my 15 minutes, but really wanted to just tee this up, and we'll turn it over to Corinne to help us facilitate the discussion amongst council members.
Awesome, wonderful. Hi folks, Corinne Buchanan from the California Health and Human Services Agency. Secretary Gali said this before, but I'll say it again. It is really thanks to JC and the team at DHCS that we've been able to push the envelope, I think, on what Medicaid can do in California in addressing the social determinants of health, and namely housing, in order to address health outcomes, and really putting the money where our mouth is and investing to be able to address homelessness. So pretty cool. Thank you so much, JC, for the overview. So when we think about the really historic investment of $15 billion, I'll say it again, of funding that we've invested over the last couple of years in addressing homelessness, I think about all the places we've invested. We've invested really significantly in creating new housing settings along a continuum through brick and mortar investments. We've invested in our homeless response system, in our social services system, in our healthcare delivery system, which you just heard about, in our education system, in our veterans services system. And I think what that means is that it is very clear that it takes a village to end homelessness and to be able to meet the diverse needs of our population. But I think more importantly, we would all agree that if we were to do this work in silos, even if we spent every penny of that $15 billion, it will not have nearly the impact it would have if we do it in an integrated way. It's harder to do the work in an integrated way, but I think most of us here, probably all of us, would agree that it's worth it. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask everybody to put on their chief dot connector hats right now to have a conversation about this work. And I would ask our council members just to think a little bit about how within your own sphere of influence, what can you do to help advance the work? What can we do to support DHCS in advancing this work? And then secondly, how can we leverage CalAIM effectively within our own programs for the people who you serve and also for the programs that you operate? We want to hear how this is happening already. I think it's helpful for others to hear sort of where the collaboration is happening, but also where you see opportunities to be able to do this work more. So I'll go ahead first. Looks like we've got Councilmember Ron O'Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you, JC, for the presentation. So this is super exciting. So I'm gonna just kind of jump in thinking about the population that I'm serving, right? Our higher ed students that they're in our higher ed system. I think the traditional narrative is we're not sick enough to make it to the top of the list. I think so when you know there are these really exciting programs, when I think about it at our college level, at the local level, how do our students, so number one, I think at our system, we haven't really pushed for Medi-Cal enrollment a lot. I mean, due to capacity, due to a lot of things, but also there's, again, it goes back to the narrative, like, I'm not really sick. Why do I need to join? Why do I need to file more paperwork, right? And our health center has been operating with very little capacity. And there's a general kind of, I think, challenges in just getting reimbursement for services. And actually, I think it's much more around navigating what that looks like to be able to leverage the funding to provide better services for our students. So that's one side of it. But I think on the other side, so now we know that CalAIM is really driving at these kind of social determinants of health and how we can tap into the resources. So I can think one of the concern is for me and my constituents, I think, is when we are connecting with this, where are the entry points for us? And when we refer our students into this system, are our students actually going to be prioritized enough that they're going to be served in some way, right? And so we want to get realistic around that. And we obviously in higher ed also have received investment in supporting affordable housing and housing services for our students. So I think we can get really clear on what CalAIM can do and cannot do for our students, for what subpopulation, right? And then we can then understand how we can leverage our funding to then fill in the gap.
Sure. So I think the hard part, so one I would say is we really are trying to push to make sure even college students are really enrolling in Medi-Cal if they are eligible. And so there's been some great partnerships and look forward to expanding that in the future. I think the other piece I would say is, CalAIM is so multifaceted in regards to what it offers. Happy to kind of offline with you. On the intersection for the enhanced care management and community supports, we do have eligibility criteria for each of the respective pieces. And so they would have to kind of meet that criteria if it comes to enhanced care management or some of the community supports, for example. But we're also doing a lot of population health management work broadly in CalAIM. So it's kind of nuanced, but I would love and happy to offline with you, Rebecca, to kind of dig into that in the future.
Okay, next up, Councilmember Morales.
I think that's me. Yeah. I just wanted to say that you totally made my day when I saw the definition that included some of our students. That almost never happens. I just can't say enough that for our families with young children and even some older youth, it is not an adequate nighttime residence to be in a homeless shelter or motel, hotel without access to a kitchen or an area to do their 30 minutes of reading every night. It is just not an appropriate spot to raise children or expect them to succeed. So thank you so much for including that definition in that work. I wanted to put in a plug. I think I heard really clearly that you want to figure out how to share all of this information and ensure that the right audience is hearing it. We've already begun planning at the Department of Education the very first in-person statewide homeless education conference for the 2023 year, end of April. So I'd be very, very happy to connect offline or share with any other council member agency who would like to share information with the actual education coordinators, both at the county level and district level, to help support all of these resources for families, especially when we use the same definition, because I know for a lot of other housing partners, it's a very, very low percentage. So of like almost 300,000 students identified as homeless in 2019 prior to the pandemic, only 15% qualified for any HUD housing services. So I can't state enough how important it was to hear that today. Thank you. And yeah, just think of education, especially in your last couple slides when you talked about incarcerated youth and that transition and that support. I think we could all agree that one very important way to change the trajectory and the continual effects of homelessness is to provide anyone of any age an appropriate education. And that is what all of our homeless education coordinators, both at the county and on school sites, are dedicated to doing, as well as us at the department. So looking forward to connecting. Thanks.
Great, we'll move next to Councilmember DeMorris.
Thank you. Thank you so much, JC. That was very informative. It's great to watch these presentations evolve as you know more, you share more, and then we learn more. It's wonderful. And thanks to your team, you've been doing fantastic outreach to our nonprofit and CBO partners. In the Aging Network, we have 33 area agencies on aging statewide that are really eager to participate. Most of them provide about half of the community supports that were listed. We also have our network of 11 caregiver resource centers that provide respite care. And together with Director Xavier at the Department of Rehabilitation, we offer the Aging and Disability Resource Connections. And through the ADCRCs, we can participate in some of the enhanced care management and community supports as well. So the big thank you is the PATH funding and the grant opportunities to build that business acumen and capacity in our network. And what's different here, what's so exciting, but I think the mindset in the network historically is if it relates to Medi-Cal, it will come to us. And there are parts of this that where our CBOs and nonprofits and AAAs really need to be proactive. And our big concern is that the window will close. They'll discover, oh, we don't automatically become a community support provider. So with your help and your partnership in these education sessions, we're really able to keep them informed, remind them of key deadlines, and do some of the work between those official meetings to help build the capacity that they need to participate. And so thank you. Just keep it coming.
But I would flag for you, and I'm sure it's not on the slide, but we have 5 rounds of funding. So if they didn't make it in the first round, you can let them know there is another round where we will be able to afford them that opportunity.
Great.
And that reminds me to put the link for the PATH funding into the chat, which I will do for you, JC. We want everybody who's here, so take a look at that link. Councilmember Lewis.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you, JC. Let me just say, CalAIM and all the gaps that it can help fill to address housing crisis, but obviously to increase people's health outcomes is really exciting. And I'm grateful that you all have pushed the envelope, right, to allow us to do this. And I think there's so much great potential. And I think that there's a couple of things we can look at to improve. One, the number of applications coming for ECM, because I think people are scared of ECM, right? just talking to folks, they're scared. They're scared of it, even providers who are Medi-Cal, right? It's just, so that's the reason you probably have more community supports and have more housing navigation, because it's probably the simplest versions of what folks can do. But I think there's a couple of things that come to mind for me. So one, part of the challenge, and if we can get some type of coordination at the MCP level, because different rates for different providers for the same thing, it's just different requirements, different billing systems. Let's not even talk about the fact that all of us across the state are struggling with an EHR to satisfy everything that connects with the MCP's billing. Like it's madness, right? And so I think that obviously there's a level of autonomy that MCPs have, and I'm not questioning that. But in the absence of some coordination, and obviously they're still building the plane, right, while it's flying. And so it would be really helpful if we could get some coordination among the MCPs, especially for providers. Some have access to multiple, like many have 2 or 3, they're contracted with 2 or 3, but that creates an undue burden, especially because there's so much variation. So that's the one thing, if your department could work on that, that would be really helpful. The other thing is that, as I said, there's a lot of excitement around CalAIM, and people are throwing it out there as a term, but when it comes to taking it from concept to like, how do we actually realize this, right? In terms of not only understanding the eligibility, but how does it interact and intersect with other state and local funding, right? The eligibility requirements that vary depending on the types of community supports or ECM activities, like all these things. There's I've seen some really good materials, and I benefit from being a part of a cohort that CCF is paying for homeless service providers who are going through this process, but that's not available at a wide scale. And so literally like having some, and I think the IPP was meant to do this, but it's not quite because it's individual, having some type of either materials or sessions where really it can go from concept, right, to really understanding how to bring it to life with all of these nuances. I think that's the piece that's missing. And that's the reason why probably the applications have not necessarily been as many as you thought they would be, although there's a lot of excitement about it, because there's a lot of details. The devil is in the details, as they say. And because of the variations of the MCPs and because of some of the other things, it's just sometimes it's not clear. And so I think there needs to be a lot of effort put into really figuring out material-wise, conversation-wise, webinar-wise, how do you help people realize concept to this, again, with all those other considerations in terms of how it interacts with the other funding that has to be attached. And I think that it will be helpful for us to have that at the state level, but also then people will really be able to look at their own organizations, understand their bandwidth and capacity, and prepare, right, to apply and benefit from CalAIM. And then the last thing I'll say is that, even though a good number of the community support contracts in place now are for housing navigation, one of the key barriers to implementing I'm just going to call it housing navigation, I'm talking about all 3 of them, is when you're talking about a population of folks that are unsheltered and are transient, and you can't get paid until you contact them, but there may be days of work to contact them. And I know that there's some limitations because it's Medicaid, so I understand that, JC, but I just want to share with you, that is why you may have, if you look at your data, you probably have a lot of community supports that have not turned the spigot on yet. Because part of the challenge is, how do you, when you're talking about that population, you can only get paid when you actually make contact, there's a lot of liability there involved, right? And organizations are having to make decisions around even their capacity, knowing that they may not get paid for weeks because they can't contact people. So just something to think about in terms of the focus on a population that is not necessarily easily can easily be contacted, and what that means for how people structure how they put these things. So anyway, we can talk offline, but I'm really excited, and I think it's a great opportunity. And I think if we can address some of these pieces that seem like kind of ambiguous or that are not coordinated, like we can really do what I think you envisioned, and Dr. Galley and Corinne and all of you envisioned us being able to do across this state. There's some gaps in terms of people being able to really help bring it to life on the ground, but they're fixable, right? Yeah. So And then the last thing I'll say, the pre-release work is amazing. And I think, pre-release as a whole, as it relates to addressing people returning home and not having a place to live as it relates to CDCR and other folks is important. So I'm excited to see that we can pay for that. And I'm hoping that we could take that to scale. But I think part of the things I talked about even would allow us to take that to scale further, once we can get more people willing and able and comfortable with accessing CalAIM.
Yeah, so let me address a few of the pieces you raised and then happy to offline. So on the managed care plans and some of the off pieces, we have updated some of our policy based on some provider work groups that we did. One of the things, for example, we were seeing a variation in regards to how fast someone was plans were authorizing recuperative care, for example. Well, if someone's in an inpatient bed, that has to be essentially deemed like an emergency authorization so they can get in quickly. We've started making those types of tweaks based on these provider work group feedback. So I'd love to offline with you so that I can get kind of some of those types of pieces of where you're seeing the variation or the inconsistencies, because we are trying to standardize some of those policies. So I would love to offline with you on what you're experiencing, because we're making a number of those tweaks. In regards to the one piece, I would say our local collaboration is rolling out in 2023. It took a little longer for us to get some, we had to do a statewide poll to find vendors who could help us do local collaboration and facilitate. We're hoping there will also be toolkits coming out, and that's really to kind of start doing local hubs to kind of inform community-based organizations, providers on what is ECM, what are these community supports. Not every provider can do them, for example. So it's about finding the right people who have that expertise in order to do this stuff. And so those will be coming in 2023. And hopefully that will help kind of bring it all together for people who are still navigating. And that will be available over the multiple years of the PATH fund so that we can get that local collaboration, making sure people are tracking the details. We'll also have that technical assistance marketplace is what we're calling it, to help them come in and assess what they would need to ask for from the PATH funds. For example, if billing is their issue, or they don't know if they'd really be a good ECM provider, we would be able to have a technical assistance kind of come in and help. So that will all be launching in 23. So we'll make sure we get you some of that information. Now, I want to address your outreach and engagement thing, because as we're going across the state, it's probably one of the biggest things that we're hearing. So when community health workers went live in July of this year, we think that's probably the biggest opportunity for people to use, is using community health workers out there engaging with people, because that's now a Medi-Cal reimbursable benefit. So doing that engagement, so you're being reimbursed. Oftentimes community health workers are on an ECM team for sure, right? Because ECM teams are usually clinical and non-clinical teams together. And so using that community health worker to be doing that engagement, so you're getting the reimbursement for the engagement with people, knowing that that can take a significant period of time. And then once you identify someone and they are engaged and they want to enroll and participate in enhanced care management, then you kind of switch over to the enhanced care management piece. Oftentimes the community health worker is on the ECM team as well. We've seen that working really well with some of our ECM providers across the state. And so we're trying to push that as a model. So we'll make sure that's in some of our guidance. I just wanted to raise it since we are hearing that. And so we're really trying to get the word out on that particular strategy, especially for people experiencing homelessness, where we know the touch is, can take quite a bit of time. So I just wanted to hit on some points, but happy to offline with you.
Thank you, JC.
Awesome, thanks, y'all. So we are just a few minutes over. So we're gonna take the last three comments. We'll do Councilmember Johnson, Olmsted, and Xavier, and then we're gonna try to move us along to our next agenda item. So I'll pass it right now to Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. And again, and I'll be quick. I just want to also appreciate Director Cooper for her leadership in this effort. It is transformational and super helpful for us. You're hearing themes of integration, alignment, and leveraging, and that's exactly our intent on the social services component here, both with our local social service agencies, community-based organizations, tribes, and others that help us serve and support on the ground and community. So I think for us, it's not only the crisis or immediate intervention, but it's also how we're looking for that longer term and deeper intervention and be able to sustain and stabilize support. So again, leveraging the funds that are part of maybe a home safe that's supporting adult protective services population, or those families in CalWorks, for example. So really looking at how we can blend and braid and leverage funding across those spectrums. And we've seen some success in several communities that are doing just that. I also just want to name and note, while it's not necessarily tied directly to the housing component, it's also just the appreciation for the intentional focus on how we are supporting children and youth in foster care, and looking specifically at how their receipt of kind of physical health, mental health, substance use disorder treatment, social services, oral health, how we are really looking at that across the board with CalAIM and finding opportunities to strengthen our service array and delivery to the youth in foster care. So just want to also highlight that as a focus and appreciation of this effort.
Awesome. Let's go to Zach. You're up.
Thanks. JC. The housing thing is probably too hard to deal with really quickly, but let me ask a question, because one of the ways we overcome barriers, some of the barriers that you indicated, are we tie the resources to the housing unit rather than the person. We call that project basing when it comes to vouchers. Do any of these resources allow us to do that? That would be quite helpful in getting affordable housing providers or permanent supportive housing providers to even set aside units or give some advantage to folks who are receiving any of these services. So would that be something that would be allowable in your mind? Or certainly we can talk about it offline, but essentially being able to tie those services to the unit, which allows some amortization to fund operating subsidies, which is essentially one of the biggest barriers within permanent supportive housing creation. And so I'll stop there, but being able to do something like that, is that something that you guys have contemplated or you think would be allowable?
So happy to offline with you, Zach. It is a little complicated because the services are tied to the person themselves, given the eligibility criteria for them. But I'm always open to thinking broadly about how we use various pieces and dollars. So I think it's probably, I agree with you, it's probably too long for this conversation, so we can connect offline, and I definitely know how to reach you. So thank you.
Awesome. Let's go to Councilmember Xavier.
So thank you. And yeah, transformational is a way an understatement of what's taking place here. So as a person with a disability, I've been advocating for true integration all my life, and here it is in real time. And I think as we're doing this, a couple of things that I just want to put on the table. A lot of the specialization that is now available through this real integrated approach scares the people who are doing this specialized work. It changes their business models. And so I think, as Director DeMora said, we need to continue to work with our communities to really see this opportunity of how they bring the specialized skill to this true integrated approach. And I think more and more work needs to be done on that front, because the expertise is there, but the how-to, the shift in how you do business in this integrated way has not caught up. The other thing that I think is worth putting into this conversation as we move forward is the social piece that you've spoken here, I think is exceedingly powerful on health. And I think we need to take it to that next step and also think about, and how about employment? How about the employment that ensures the sustainability of this, both in terms of preventing the people from losing their jobs, as well as how do we get them back into employment once they lose their job? So I think there's a lot of linkage there to continue to explore.
I would just say I agree. I agree with the integration. It's one of the hardest parts. I agree with both, just to be clear. I didn't want that to come off the wrong way. I think the biggest challenge for people with CalAIM is the integration factor of it. I'll be honest with you, because the system, Medi-Cal broadly, is so siloed, and we're now saying, okay, we want everyone to hold hands and kumbaya and work together and partner and think about a person, because a person doesn't come divided, they come as one whole person, right? And so, but that is, you're moving people's cheese, for a lack of better description, and you're making them forge partnerships they didn't have before. So I agree with you 100%, Joe. This is like partnership management, connections, collaboration on steroids. And so we just have to keep working at it every single day and connecting dots for people. I loved that comment by Mark at the beginning of the thing. I might steal it, chief dot connectors, because that is really what we have to do for this to ultimately be successful. And we know it's going to take time. We know that this is a process in phases, and we will get there. But I just love that we're having the conversations and we're doing the work. And so one challenge at a time. And yes, I agree. Employment is extremely important. And so hopefully we'll be able to lift that up very soon.
And we can have the specialization without isolation. You know, we've got to get past that. To be specialized, you got to be isolated. That's not true.
I agree 100%.
Awesome. And I'll turn it to Secretary Esther Ramirez, our co-chair.
Thank you, Corinne. Thank you for facilitating, and JC, great presentation, but more importantly, a great work leading all of the moving parts, because this was not just about CalAIM, but it's also about the investments that are being made at the local level to build capacity. And, you know, I was reflecting on the points that my colleague, Secretary Galley, made about the importance of having this council look at ways to strengthen alignment, systems and integration, but as he called it, connecting the dots. And, you know, within, when we look at housing affordability and housing insecurity, one of the greatest challenges that we have is the undersupply of housing, specifically the undersupply of affordable housing or housing for very low income individuals. Over the last couple of years, this administration has invested tremendously to produce more units more quickly. And so we've made tremendous investments, whether it's through HomeKey or through the tax credit allocation program. And so I think as a follow-up, and maybe as we begin to look at 2023, I'm really interested in figuring out how do we connect these investments more strategically or with intention to the housing investments that the state has made, whether that's HomeKey, whether that's an MPH side or an affordable housing community. And maybe this is sort of the question that some of the housing providers are also trying to figure out. What is the opportunity for us to be able to ensure that residents that we're housing that are eligible for this level of support and service, that they're able to connect and also help navigate and facilitate. So just wanted to sort of essentially put a pin on that as an opportunity for greater systems alignment and collaboration and connecting the dots. But I thank you all so much for leading the charge and really leading across the country. I mean, this is very transformational, as everybody has mentioned. And so thank you so much. And I think with that, unless Secretary Galley, do you have any closing remarks here? We can turn it over to Cody. Okay, Cody.
Great. All right. Thank you all. Thank you to everyone for presenting, facilitating, speaking, for providing your thoughts and doing that dot connecting, which I believe is now the official theme of this meeting. So really appreciate everyone's thoughts on that. So I'm going to move us to the next agenda item. We're going to reshare the presentation. We are running a few minutes behind, so we'll try to move quickly through this section. We have 2 more agenda items left. So in this next item, we'll hear brief updates from CalICH staff, as well as from Helene Schneider from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. After that, we'll have a few minutes for council members to provide any quick announcements about upcoming events, NOFA opportunities, or other time-sensitive topics that they'd like this whole council to be aware of before our next council meeting. First, I will pass it to CalICH Grants Director, Victor Duran.
Thank you so much, Cody, and thank you, council members, as always, for this opportunity to provide an update on the great work happening here at CalICH through our various grants. I'll begin with an update on round 3 of funding for the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, otherwise known as HAP3. Next slide, please. So for those of you who are newer to our programs here, HAP3 is a $1 billion one-time flexible block grant for continuums of care, counties, and large cities, which are those cities with a population of over 300,000. And it's to provide support for direct services, capacity building, system supports, and I would venture to say that chief dot connecting role as well within and across the homelessness response systems. And with HAP3, there's a number of new features over prior rounds of HAP, including a requirement for a local homelessness action plan that includes a data landscape assessment, specific metrics in the form of measurable performance goals, outcome goals for disproportionately impacted communities, which includes a focus on racial equity, and an opportunity for public comment through local jurisdictions' governing bodies. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to report a number of statutory goals that the Cal-ICH team has hit and continues to work on as we get ready to stand up HAP3. So Cal-ICH staff conducted individualized engagements and provided intensive technical assistance over a 6-month period with all 75 applicants. And these 75 applicants represent the 114 eligible jurisdictions, those cities, counties, and COCs. And so for those of you who are wondering, if there's 114 eligible jurisdictions, why were there 75 applicants? Because one of the things that we've been working very hard on is encouraging those jurisdictions with overlapping geographic service areas to apply jointly to further strengthen those cross-jurisdictional collaborations. We're happy to report that the grant staff received all of the applications by the June 30th statutory deadline and assessed that all 75 applications satisfied conditions of statute by the statutory deadline of September 29th. So at this point, Cal-ICH and VCSH leadership continue to work with the administration on a final review of HAP3's collective outcomes. Next slide, please. I'm also excited to report some updates on some of our other grant activities. So as many of you may have seen in some of the recent press releases, Cal-ICH recently released an additional $48 million in Encampment Resolution Fund awards to support 8 new projects across the state, serving nearly 1,400 individuals who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness in encampments throughout the state. In addition, Cal-ICH grant staff anticipates releasing an application process in December for another round of encampment resolution funds, approximately $250 million in additional funds. So we're very excited to see more projects launched through this initiative. And lastly, we're very excited to report that we have completed our review of the 16 applications that we received for our first ever tribal grant. And Cal-ICH anticipates announcing those tribal awards in mid-November, so hopefully next week, in fact. Next slide, please. I also wanted to provide an update on HAP round 4. So those of you, many of you may be aware that as we've transitioned to the new model of HAP from rounds 1 and 2 over to 3 and 4, part of that has been sort of a realigning of the timeline for getting the funds out. So right on the heels of HAP 3, we have another round of funding that's in the works, and the Cal-ICH staff is working really hard to meet all of the statutory deadlines, including having met the statutory deadline of releasing the HAP 4 application by September 30th. We've also begun all of the individual engagements with our HAP grantees as required in statute to ensure timely and complete submission of all HAP 4 applications by the statutory deadline of November 29th. And we will continue to work with all of our grantees through the statutory 90-day review period that comes after November 29th to finalize all of the HAP 4 plans by the statutory deadline of February 20th. So thank you all so much for this opportunity to provide some quick updates. As you can see, lots of great work happening, and the grant team is very busy, but very excited to be supporting all of these statewide initiatives. Cody, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Victor. Now I'll invite Helene Schneider from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness to provide federal updates.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity again to give this brief update. And it will be brief. I know we're short on time. Really just want to express my appreciation to everyone, and please reach out to me for any resources or as your federal partner. The first, I only have 2 slides here and then my information here, but wanted just to acknowledge and congratulate both Santa Barbara County, my home county, woohoo, and Sacramento Steps Forward for receiving they're the 2 California COCs who just received the latest Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program awards, 17 awards nationwide, significant funds for youth homelessness, ending youth homelessness, and working with youth action boards and others. So just wanted to acknowledge that. And if you're unaware of Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program awards, they've been around for several years and 77 past award recipients, and really some amazing work that's happened. And what I've been excited to see is what's happened after the award period in terms of keeping youth engaged and involved in part of the decision-making process. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And then the other thing the other mention on this next slide that I have here that I wanted to make sure people saw, there's HUD put out an emergency housing voucher utilization dashboard, which shows progress in real time. So if you want to see any COC and anyone who received emergency housing vouchers and how they're doing with their utilization, where the gaps may be, it's a real-time dashboard there that oh, well, thank you, County Office of Education, recent participant. I just saw that in the chat. Good for San Diego County. But this EHV utilization piece is another way of just showing some good data and to acknowledge and to see best practices moving forward. But acknowledging that as of October 2022, 50% of those EHVs have been leased up, over 35,000 people housed, and 36,000 vouchers are still in the process. So we still have work to do. But there are those vouchers there. And just before I end, this information came out after I sent the slides off to staff, but want to acknowledge that a preview of the 2022 point in time count came out from HUD and USICH we put out about veteran homelessness. Very excited to see that since 2020 point in time count, there's an 11% decline in veteran homelessness, which brings us to a 55.3% decline in veteran homelessness from 2010. And what this tells us, we believe, is that we know how to do this work. We're all working very hard, but there's some barriers involved with other areas, including the resources and funding and having a continual source of funding, but we can look to veterans and see what works and hopefully then utilize those best practices with other populations. So if you go to my last slide here, just again, want to thank you for your work. Please reach out to me if you want to have any connections with other federal agencies or just for me to be your federal partner, and I'll turn it back to you, Cody. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Helene. Thanks for always coming to provide us with the federal update. Really appreciate that. More dot connecting. All right, so I am going to call a little bit of an audible here. And because of time, instead of having verbal updates from council members on sort of like time sensitive activities or announcements or NOFA opportunities, I'd love for you all to put that in the chat so that we can collect those and send them out afterward to everyone. People will be able to see them now, and we'll also be able to more effectively send them out. So as you're doing that, I will move on to the next agenda item. And if there's anything that we missed or any questions that you all have based on the presentations that you've heard, please feel free to send us an email at calich@bcsh.ca.gov so we can help direct them to the right place. Also, if anyone didn't have the chance to share their announcement, you can put it in the chat. So I'll now turn it to Giselle Sanchez to facilitate public comments.
Hello, thank you for all the participants in this meeting, attendees who are sticking with us till the end of this meeting. We will now accept general comments. As a reminder, to ensure everybody is given a chance to speak who would like to, we would allow for a maximum of 2 minutes for each comment. Our team will put a 2-minute timer up on the screen and warn you when your time is about to run out. We welcome all public comments and feedback. However, due to the structure of this meeting, we are unable to respond to them. For this reason, if you have any specific questions we would like that you would like answered, we ask that you please email us at calich@bcsh.ca.gov. If you're connected through Zoom, please find the raised hand icon. And if you're connected through phone, please press *9 to indicate you'd like to comment. We have about 4 commenters currently. First commenter, Kristen Astor. You may voice your comment.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Kristen Astor. I'm the Director of Public Policy with the People Concern. We're a service provider in Los Angeles County. We share the administration's desire to have a stronger sense of urgency around the state to address homelessness. Homelessness in California is a crisis, and we must treat it and fund it like one. State funding and innovation has been a game changer to address homelessness in our communities, and we greatly appreciate this administration's leadership, including the partnership of Cal ICH and DSS. We are nonetheless concerned about the potential withholding of HAP3 funding over a year after it was approved by the legislature, and in many cases when it has already been allocated for much needed programming. We believe a commitment to robust ongoing funding is critical to strengthen homelessness programs and local responses to homelessness that ends with access to permanent housing and will ultimately lead to the robust accountability and results we all desire. Thank you so much. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you for your comment. Alex Vizowski, you may voice your comment.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alex Vysotski with the National Alliance to End Homelessness. I want to thank Secretary Castro Ramirez, Secretary Galley, and especially the kind of remarks earlier in the meeting about recognizing kind of the conditions on the ground and the barriers that local entities are facing. And also really want to thank the Cal ICH staff for their just continued work. They face a lot of challenges to getting this money out the door, to working with local grantees, and they've always been great partners, I know, to local entities, and have worked really hard to be good partners. At National Alliance, we share the administration's zeal for more accountability, for better results with HAP. I think we all share the same goal of ending homelessness for our most vulnerable neighbors, but are really concerned about this effort to hold back HAP3 funding. As the previous public commenter mentioned, in some cases, this funding is already programmed, allocated to specific service providers. And by halting it, we're jeopardizing continuity of services in shelters and rental subsidy programs, other types of programs where they may have to pause their services as funding is not released soon. I think, to Victor's earlier comment, grantees have satisfied the conditions of statute here. And if we want to see greater accountability, we think the way to do that is through the statutory process, through working with the legislature, and also through looking at, a consistent ongoing source of funding that emphasizes ending people's homelessness with permanent housing. So we would encourage the administration to use this moment to look at how we can refine the HAP program and deliver results through, a permanent program that ensures local.
Alex, could you please wrap up your comment?
Yep, and ensure local programs, are operating with continuity. I think to date, too many programs have been forced to scale up, scale back down, and maintaining that continuity is challenging. So thank you so much. We appreciate the staff and leadership of Cal ICH, as well as DSS and all the other partners who are here.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Next, Joe Coletti. Joe, are you able to speak?
Yes, Advisory Committee member Joe Coletti, Urban Initiatives, and we Urban Initiatives have worked closely with lots of the state's 44 continuums of care over the years. I just want to give a shout out to Cody and Matthew Doherty for helping connect CDPH, Department of Public Health, our state department, with 17 Southern California and neighboring COCs. Last week, the 17 COCs and CDPH specialists, Molly, Pike, I'm, Johnny, had a great conversation about mortality data and research and mortality prevention in light of the thousands of persons who died while homeless statewide during past years. As you know, council members, enhancing availability of data regarding mortality under the leadership of CDPH is now in the action plan, which will help you, the council, craft future recommendations regarding mortality prevention and hopefully save thousands of lives. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We have Mari Cascaldi. You may voice your comment.
Yes, hi, I'm Mari Castaldi. I'm the Senior Legislative Advocate on Homelessness at Housing California. Want to echo some of the previous comments and kudos about the hard work of this council and its members and advisory committee members and the important dot connecting happening through this work. But also wanted to chime in and echo the concern about the decision to withhold HAP Round 3 funding. Irrespective of the reasons behind the decision, delay in these funds could have severe implications, including people out of shelter, back onto the street, rental assistance payments that don't go out, frontline workers that don't get paid. And while we totally agree that we should be vigilant about quality services and systems, fear this has potential to harm our houseless neighbors who are counting on these funds and that were appropriated 16 months ago. And, you know, regarding this question of accountability, we certainly cannot excuse failures to move boldly and equitably towards ending homelessness. However, nor can we try to hold the emergency room. And that's in a lot of ways what local homeless response systems are, emergency systems. We can't blame emergency rooms for the existence of a pandemic or expect an ER to solve a pandemic on its own. That's the power of the work of this council, that we're sort of building broader systems, looking at systemic drivers, breaking down silos, and that's really critical as we think about what it will take to bring down the numbers of people experiencing homelessness. And, you know, to that end, the recent investments in homelessness, affordable housing, tenant protections are ending homelessness for tens of thousands of Californians. In fact, local homeless response systems, HAP recipients, are housing more people than ever before. And if we want bolder results, we'll also need bolder ongoing investments in the solutions we know work to end homelessness. We've talked about them today: deeply affordable housing, supportive services, targeted homeless prevention to stop the tide of people entering our shelters and living on our sidewalks. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your comment. We have Simone Turek-Lee. You may voice your comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Simone Turek-Lee, Director of Housing and Health with John Burton Advocates for Youth. We very much appreciate the unprecedented investment in youth homelessness that the state has made through both HAP and HomeKey. And we all want to see our state funding making maximum impact on homelessness and understand the important need for accountability. But we do have grave concerns about pausing HAP funding. I'd like to speak to the particular impact on youth. Prior to HEAP and then HAP, which include a youth set aside, and HomeKey, there was virtually no infrastructure for serving youth experiencing homelessness in our state. With the exception of the now 9 communities in California that do have HUD funding through the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, youth are largely not being served with federal funding from HUD. HAP is really the foundation at this point for the youth homelessness response system in California. We've just started to create that infrastructure with HAP, and we've seen the impact. In 9 of the 13 largest cities, early results from the 2022 point in time count have been released locally, and based on that data, we're looking at a 25% reduction in homelessness among youth since 2020. By pausing HAP funding, we aren't just pulling the icing off the cake, but we're taking away the whole cake. We're really pulling the foundation out for serving youth experiencing homelessness. We strongly encourage the administration to recognize the critical dominant role that HAP plays in the existence of a homelessness response system for youth and young adults, and to remember this when making decisions about HAP moving forward. And to close, we believe that HAP can be refined to produce the accountability we all desire, and we appreciate the staff and leadership of Cal ICH as well as DSS, who've been strong partners, and HCD, who've been strong partners to local grantees, administering funding for homelessness.
Please wrap up your comment.
as we all work together toward the same goal of ending homelessness, including youth homelessness in California. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. There are no more hands raised. I will turn it to the co-chairs for any final remarks. And we'll start with Secretary Castro Ramirez.
All right, thank you, Giselle. I lost connectivity in the middle of public comment, but I will, definitely follow up and just want to say a few things. First, thank you so much, council members, for today's robust conversation, and special thanks to my co-chair and our co-chair of this council, Secretary Galley, for continuing to remind us that the work of the council is to ensure that we are advancing one sort of common objective, right? Bringing our departments and agencies together to be more intentional in terms of how we connect our investments, our policies, and our programs to ensure that we're moving more quickly to prevent and end homelessness. Also want to express appreciation to the advisory committee members. We had a really great conversation today, learning more about the areas of opportunity for all of us as we continue to strengthen systems and strengthen the delivery of our programs at the local level, and look forward to their continued engagement. And then for members of the public that have joined us, I'm always impressed by the level of engagement and participation. Well over 200 people joined us today again. And so we thank you for staying involved and engaged. We need to hear from you. We need your voices, your ideas, and your feedback as we continue to move the priorities of this council forward. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Secretary Galley, if he is still on, to say a few words to close out. Oh, he's back. There you go. Secretary Galley, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And Lourdes, thanks so much. And really, just to wrap up, terrific conversation. Really appreciate everyone's effort on the presentation, to the council's staff and team. Thank you for helping us run it. Certainly pretty close on time, but very rich conversations. JC, thanks for the very important presentation, and Corinne for facilitating the conversation, and to the advisory committee for joining us and really pushing us in the ways that I know you will. And as we go forward to connect those dots and figure out what more we can do, I'm really looking forward to what we do as we wrap up this year, but excited about the goals and the work of all of our departments in their own silos, but really busting them down and coming together in all the ways that we can to end homelessness. So with that, Cody, I'll turn it to you to wrap us up. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Really, really appreciate it again. With all of that, we've gone through all of our agenda items. So this meeting is officially adjourned at 5:13 p.m. Thank you all for joining us. As always, our meeting materials are available on our council meetings webpage. To receive up-to-date information on the council's activities, please sign up on the council's email list on our webpage. There's a sign-up option there. We also encourage you to follow Cal ICH on social media platforms, and we hope to reach out soon with the schedule of our meetings for next year. See you all in 2023.